How's your hammer, everybody? I'm PTDevil, and welcome to another episode of The Deck Doctors. In this series, we'll be looking at some of the most unplayable archetypes in the whole game, figuring out why they're so bad, and designing some new support to help make them playable. The process we'll be using is examining what it is they do, diagnosing what their problems are, and prescribing a treatment for them to be less awful. With all that said, let's get to the video. I think most of you will agree with me when I say that ninjas are simultaneously the most underrated and overrated archetype in the game. Underrated because while the overall archetype has been epically mishandled, there are some functional builds that you can run that can be legitimately fun and interesting to play with and against. And overrated because holy hell, there is way too much ninja shit these days! I say this knowing full well that the same sentiment could be applied to virtually every other media franchise in existence, and while I do find ninjas in general to be overused and boring, with some exceptions, the sheer train wreck that is this archetype has me genuinely invested in making something interesting out of this bunch of cards. Now, before you call me out for being a bit harsh on this archetype that only recently got solidified as a legitimate deck, let me remind you that this set of cards existed as an archetype since the early 2000s, and they were still getting accidental members into the archetype well into the Pendulum era. Because of this, I will be skipping over the Karakuri and super heavy samurai monsters that malfunctioned their asses into this archetype, because they do not help the ninja playstyle at all, and splashing ninja support cards into their own respective decks will do a lot more harm than good. Also, to avoid making this video 10 times longer than it needs to be, I will be skimming over a lot of these at most while going more in depth into the decent members. Also, since I can't be asked enough to research the release dates of every member of an archetype as schizophrenic as this, I will be going in the much simpler order of YGO Pro Percy to save myself that headache. Thus, we start out with Twilight Ninja KAGEN, a level 1 Dark Warrior Pendulum monster with 0 attack and 2000 defense and a scale of 10. Its pendulum effect says you cannot pendulum summon monsters except ninja monsters. This effect cannot be negated. Once per turn, when your ninja monster declares an attack, you can make that monster gain 1000 attack until the end of the damage step, even if this card leaves the field. Its monster effect says you contribute this card, then target one ninja monster you control. It gains 800 attack until the end of this turn. As opposed to pendulum summoning being something the archetype was based on, or even something they would benefit from, this is just something shoehorned into the so-called Twilight Ninja playstyle. Even today, there are no ninja monsters with a level greater than 8, and most of those can't be pendulum summoned to begin with, so that extra scale is mainly just for show. A 0 scale would have been much more useful in this archetype due to the high number of level 1 monsters the archetype has, including this one, but this was before that scale even existed, so I guess I have to give that one a pass. Heck, this came out at a time when scales of 1 and 8 needed military-grade restrictions to prevent them from being overused in every deck to break the meta with this broken new game mechanic. God help them if someone were to show them Borrelsword Dragon back then. Speaking of Link monsters, now that we're smack dab in the tyranny of Master Rule 4, 2 pendulum monsters clogging up what would otherwise be valuable back row space will do a lot more harm than good to the ninja's playstyle. You may also notice that I'm not even talking about the effects in this discussion, and that's simply because they both suck. Ninjas are hardly known for their beatdown strategies, let alone ones that rely on attack boosts this mediocre. Long story short, this is just a hugely outdated card that isn't worth even looking at today. Next up is Armed Ninja, a level 1 Earth with 300 attack and defense, and its flip effect lets you target and destroy one spell card on the field. If the target is set, reveal it and destroy it if it is a spell card. It's one of the first effect monsters ever released in OCG Volume 3. I feel like that says leagues more about the card than anything I ever could. Two things worth mentioning is that 1, there is a reason to run this thing at 3, but it isn't a very good one, and 2 is that we'll be coming back to this card later for lore-related reasons. There's also Crimson Ninja, who is literally the exact same card as Armed Ninja, other than destroying trap cards. Literally everything I said about the previous card also applies here. Its effect is way too old to matter, it can be used in a bad gimmick, and we'll be coming back to this card for lore later. Next up is the level 3 Wind Lady Ninja Yai. No, I am not going to make that joke. It has been completely done to death by now, and just looking at it pisses me off. Anyway, it's a one-sided giant Trunade for your opponent that requires you to discard a wind monster as cost. This would be perfectly fine as a side deck card against certain matchups, if it weren't for that specific cost, which requires you to build a deck completely around it. There are a surprising number of wind ninjas for you to use, but those you would want to run are also ones you would rather have accessible in your hand instead of using them as discard fodder. Not worth the effort. It gets a bit more interesting with Upstart Golden Ninja, a level 4 light with 500 attack and 1800 defense, and the following effect. Once per turn, you can send one trap from your hand to the graveyard, special summon one level 4 or lower ninja monster from your deck in face-up defense position or face-down defense position. I mean, yeah, you're going to be running quite a few trap cards when playing this deck. It's just a question of whether the trap cards in your hand would be better as a play enabler than as fodder for field spamming. That's kind of sad, really. I like how he can easily summon another copy of himself, which means that the soft once per turn turns it into a decent link spam engine, albeit with some necessary setup required in your opening hand. Plus, again, you may need your trap cards more than the extra monster when playing this deck. I would run it just in case, but it's still kind of an iffy situation on whether or not it'll help. Going from an interesting one to a really quick one, AQUA Armor Ninja is a level 4 water whose only effect allows it to banish itself from the graveyard while you have another ninja in your graveyard to target and negate an opponent's direct attack. It's not every day that you see an outdated battle blocker outclassed by a fucking Kuribo, and if you're not willing to splash in a Kuribo into your deck to stop direct attacks, then you shouldn't be willing to run this thing either. Next up is a duo of monsters known as Masked Ninja Ebisu and Goe Goe the Gallant Ninja. Why a duo? Because their effects make no sense on their own and they're clearly meant to be used in tandem with one another. Ebisu lets you, once per turn if you have another ninja monster on your field, bounce your opponent's spell traps up to the number of ninja monsters you control. Also, all Goe Goe you control can attack directly. When Goe Goe deals battle damage to your opponent, they must discard 2 cards from their hand, but they must have 5 cards in their hand to activate and resolve this effect. Not exactly the Gumblar dragon we were looking for. In fact, they're pretty frickin' bad. Not only do you have to have 2 very specific monsters on the field, the strongest of which has all of 1500 attack, but you have to get at least 5 cards into your opponent's hand before being able to discard 2 of them. Even with the mass bounce effect, and that's assuming you have enough field presence to bounce your opponent's entire back row, if your opponent still has 5 cards in their hand even after all that, then that means your opponent must have seriously bricked, and a random double discard isn't likely to hurt them by that point. Next up is another duo, Air Armor Ninja and Flame Armor Ninja. Putting these together this time because their effects are so similar in that they're both level manipulation effects that trigger on summon and target a ninja monster you control. Air reduces the level by 1 and Flame increases by 1. The problem is that the main level for ninjas to be is 4, which both of these and all other relevant members of the archetype are. There are some reasons to have some slightly higher levels on your field, so there is an argument to run Flame Armor Ninja, but even then it's way too much effort for something that isn't really worth the time in the long run. The next card is actually somewhat interesting. Twilight Ninja Shingetsu is a level 4 dark with 1500 attack and 100 defense, and your opponent cannot target other ninja monsters you control for attacks or card effects. If this card is destroyed by battle or an opponent's card effect, you can add 1 ninja monster from your deck to your hand except itself, but you can only use this effect to Twilight Ninja Shingetsu once per turn. Remember how in the last episode I mentioned how our new card Arcana Force 16 the Tower was good for setting up a nice hopper lock? The exact same thing applies here as well. The only thing that would be better if it had an inherent summoning condition that could help getting 2 of them out in the field, but since this is a part of the celebrated Twilight Ninja gimmick, special summoning outside of the pendulum summoning was barely a thing they ever considered. The floating effect is fairly serviceable if you happen to brick, which tends to happen quite a lot with this deck, even though it's not exactly the most optimal strategy to go with. I would recommend 2 or 3 of these due to a sheer lack of options. Man, it seems like we just can't go talking about good cards in this archetype without following up with a really boring one, because next up we have White Ninja. It's another flip effect monster that targets and destroys one defense position monster on the field. Too slow, too specific, way too old to even think about running these days. However, once again, we'll have to put this card on the back burner for lore-related reasons, because apparently she was deserving of deeper lore among all other ninjas. Oh yeah, did you know this was a girl ninja? I guess it just goes to show that girls can suck at being ninjas just as much as boys are. And apparently the lore machine is just going crazy with these monsters now, because next up is Strike Ninja, one of the more quote-unquote recognizable ninja monsters. It's a level 4 dark with 1700 attack and 1200 defense, and a quick effect. You can banish 2 dark monsters from your graveyard, banish this card face up until the end phase. You can only use this effect of Strike Ninja once per turn. This level of protection and effect dodging was practically unheard of at the time of this card's release, and to be honest, it still holds up quite a bit to this day. However, there are a couple of drawbacks with it. First of all, the cost requires quite a hefty bit of setup to pull off, especially in a ninja deck due to a surprising lack of dark monsters you would want to run. Second, its method of protecting itself by pissing off to the banish pile for one turn leaves you understandably open to an OTK, rendering the effect redundant by that point. And finally, all you get for all this effort is a single monster to use in the next turn for extra deck plays, assuming there's even a next turn to begin with. Still though, this did have some significance in dark-based decks once upon a time, so this time I'd say he at least deserves the lore reference we'll get into later. Also, did you know that this was a guy ninja? Oh, you did? Well, I'm sorry, I guess I just can't tell the difference anymore. Moving on. The next card is Ninja Grandmaster HANZO. It's a level 4 dark with 1800 attack and 1000 defense, and the following effect. When this card is normal summoned, you can add 1 Ninjitsu art card from your deck to your hand. When this card is flip or special summoned, you can add 1 ninja monster from your deck to your hand except itself. Well, here's your searcher, apparently. And as convoluted as it is, it's actually pretty good. While I have occasionally been in situations where I wished I could search out one card when I could only search the other, in most cases you'll be using this as a first turn option to search out whatever play enabler you need at the moment. No matter what kind of build you're running, you're going to want to max out on this one. A slightly less notable Grandmaster is Ninja Grandmaster SASUKE, a level 4 light with the same stats that auto-kills any face-up defense position monster it attacks. While this was a pretty good monster back when it first came out, being a normal summonable 1800 beat stick that could take out some bigger walls, nowadays it's most often overlooked for ninjas that actually do things that are beneficial to your main goal. Power creep at its finest, folks. Now onto one of the most recent, and by extension best, cards in the archetype. Here we have Yellow Ninja, a level 4 wind with 1900 attack and 1800 defense, and the following effect. If this card is normal summoned or flip face up, you can special summon 1 level 4 or lower ninja monster from your hand in attack position or face down defense position. Also, you cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck for the rest of this turn except ninja monsters. You can only use this effect of Yellow Ninja once per turn. This is exactly what the archetype needed, in that as much as they need to have as many ninjas on the board as soon as possible, they're kind of embarrassingly lacking in that regard. The problem, though, because there absolutely must be a problem, is the archetype locking. While that's generally not a problem in most cases, since most archetypes have at least some sort of toolbox they can work with, in the case of ninjas, that means they're restricted to a grand total of 3 monsters, only 2 of which are likely relevant at the moment, only 1 of them can build any sort of board whatsoever, and absolutely none of them can do so without needing even more setup beyond what Yellow Ninja can do on its own. That being said, ninjas can't exactly be picky when it comes to field presence, so they need all the help they can get, so run 3 of these. Next up is Earth Armor. Oh, come on, not another armor ninja. Alright, what useless Exceed spam effect does this one have? If your opponent controls a monster and you control no monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand. Oh, that's, surprisingly relevant these days. Granted, it's a level 5, so you are screwed over in the Xyz department, but as link material, this can help build a first turn board. And yes, I consider being able to summon one of their own Xyz monsters being screwed over, and you'll see why later. Not worth maxing out on, but one or two could possibly help. The next monster is Blue Dragon Ninja, a level 5 water sea serpent type? You got a little something on your face there, buddy. You may not want to have that. Can't summon that Isolde Two Tails of the Noble Knights now. Okay, to be fair, there is a reason for this being a sea serpent type, but we'll get into that later. Anyway, its effect says, once per turn during either player's turn, you can discard one ninja monster and one ninjitsu art card to target one face-up monster your opponent controls. This turn, that monster's effects are negated, also that monster cannot attack. Yeah, this one ain't great. The cost is one of those that has the poor combination being very high and very specific. The effect negation is brought down by the fact that it targets, meaning that you'll have to use it preemptively to halt plays before they get too far in most cases. And the only saving grace of this effect is that it's a quick effect, which gives it some actual utility to make up for all the downsides. But even still, it's not worth the effort to bring to the field, so I wouldn't recommend it. Want to know something funny though? Lore-wise, this monster is the evolved form of the Armed Ninja. Yeah, this is the so-called theme of the Dragon Ninja design, in that they all reference an earlier, or at least lower-leveled ninja, awakening some latent dragon energy upon transforming. We'll get into that little detail once we reach the spell and trap lineup, but while this one is underwhelming, there are quite a few Dragon Ninjas worth running, so keep an eye out for them. For now, let's move on to the next monster, Twilight Ninja Nichirin the Chunin. It's a level 6 dark with a quick effect where you can discard a ninja monster to either protect your ninjas and ninjitsu art cards from destruction for the turn, or boost a ninja you control by 1000 for the turn. This would have been fine if this was 2 levels lower, but since it's not, it's a questionable one-off at best, since there's not much in the way of bringing this onto the field to begin with. Then we have Senior Silver Ninja, a level 6 Earth that, when flipped face up, lets you special summon any number of other ninjas from your hand or graveyard in face down defense position, but there can only be one Senior Silver Ninja on the field. The same problems as the last card, but I kinda like this one for the sheer scope of crap it can do. I wish it at least had the option to summon face up, but any card with an archetypal soul charge effect deserves at least a pass in my book. It's still a one-off at best, but at least you can get by on style points, which frankly is sometimes more admirable than quality deck building. Next we have Red Dragon Ninja, who, as you may have guessed, is the evolved form of Crimson Ninja. It's a level 6 fire winged beast with the following effect. When this card is summoned, you can banish one ninja or ninjitsu art card from your graveyard, then target one set card your opponent controls, reveal that set card, then return it to either the top or bottom of the deck. Your opponent cannot activate the targeted card in response to this effect's activation. You can only use this effect of Red Dragon Ninja once per turn. Again, it's a one-off at best, but given the method you'll be using to bring this out most often is Spell Speed 2, it's a more reasonable one-off. There's still quite a lot of matchups where this will do absolutely nothing of value, but at least it's a decent side deck card if you know there's going to be a lot of problem traps, or even flip effect monsters for some ungodly reason. Of course, I don't think I need to mention that there are better winged beast monsters to run in this deck, so consider your options greatly. Well, we've already had one Pendulum monster, so we need another one to make a full scale, so here's Twilight Ninja JOGENE. A level 7 Dark, Scale 1, whose only pendulum effect is giving your ninjas piercing damage. Its monster effect allows you to summon it from your hand by revealing a ninjitsu art card in your hand, and also piercing damage. If you're running this, you're doing so as a replacement for Earth Armor Ninja to get a free body on board, and I say replacement since running them both doesn't really add much to your plays. You would think the additional utility of it being a pendulum monster with an additional effect would make it better by default, but not only is piercing damage extremely dated, but remember that ninjas need all the back row space they can get, so you won't be using this to set scales to begin with. Speaking of back row, the next one is a simple yet effective monster, White Dragon Ninja, the evolved form of White Ninja and the cutest ninja in the archetype by far. She's a level 7 light dragon that can't be special summoned except by the effect of a ninjitsu art card. Her only effect is to prevent spell and trap cards you control from being destroyed by card effects. If it weren't for that summoning sickness, this would easily be the most splashable ninja of the lot, but since it's not, it becomes a niche one-off due to her being the biggest garnet in a deck packed full of garnets. However, it is a garnet worth running due to her covering all spell and trap cards in her effect, including a card known as Safe Zone. If Safe Zone is targeting this card, that means that they'll protect each other from destruction as well as targeting for White Dragon Ninja, meaning that your opponent will be forced to apply non-targeting, non-destruction removal to the monsters or the spell and traps, a feat which surprisingly few decks have access to. Even without this lock, the protection is desperately needed due to the number of traps which need to be protected to prevent your board from being destroyed by a goddamn MST. Again, not recommended to max out on since you really don't want to draw into it, but recommended nonetheless. Slightly less recommended is Black Dragon Ninja.
I'm having a real black ass moment right now.
It's a level 7 Dark Beast with 2800 attack and 1600 defense that cannot be special summoned except with the effect of a ninja or a ninjitsu art card. Once per turn during either player's turn, you can send one ninja monster and one ninjitsu art card from your hand and or face up from your field to the graveyard, then target one monster on the field, banish it. If this face-up card leaves the field, special summon as many monsters banished by this card's effect as possible to their owner's field. This thing was so close to being the real boss monster of this deck, but a bizarre design decision ruined any chance of this thing doing anything of relevance. While the cost is reminiscent of his blue brother, it's at least remedied a bit by being able to take it from the field as well as the hand. There are bound to be a few dead cards on the field for you to use for these effects, so this cost, while still high, actually does more help than it seems at first by clearing up valuable back row space. However, all you get out of it is a single piece of targeting removal, which would have been okay due to it being a quick effect, if it weren't for the last part of the effect, which makes it all go away if this card dares to leave the field for whatever reason. You can clear a lot of problem monsters, especially given that it's a quick effect, but playing Defend the Castle with a level 7 with under 3000 attack is not a viable strategy for any sane person. As much as I would have liked to see Strike Ninja become as cool as he looked in the anime, unfortunately Konami is allergic to fun. Next is Twilight Ninja Getsuga the Shogun. It's a level 8 Dark with 2000 attack and 3000 defense, and the following effect. You can tribute summon this card by tributing one ninja monster. If this card is in attack position, you can target 2 ninja monsters in your graveyard except for itself. Change this card to defense position, and if you do, special summon those monsters. You can only use this effect of Twilight Ninja Getsuga the Shogun once per turn. A fantastic card brought down unfortunately by its type and level. If this was the effect put on one of the Dragon Ninjas, this would be monumentally easier to summon, and that tribute summon effect isn't really helping much due to a lack of ability to build a first turn board. Still though, this is the best card ninjas have for swarming, so you still run a copy or two despite rarely ever summoning it. The last main deck monster is Yellow Dragon Ninja, the only Dragon Ninja so far to come out in the same set as his base form. It's a level 8 wind dinosaur with 3000 attack and 1500 defense, and it can't be special summoned except with the effect of a ninja monster or a ninjitsu art card. Once per turn, quick effect, you can send one ninja monster and one ninjitsu art card from your hand and or face up from your field to the graveyard, then target up to 2 spell and trap cards on the field, destroy them. It's Twin Twisters on legs, I don't know what else you want me to say. Even without that, it's the strongest ninja in terms of attack power, so it's the only source of real power in this deck. That's kind of sad, really. Anyway, you're going to want to run at least 1 or 2. Their first Xyz is Blade Armor Ninja. It's a rank 4 wind with 2200 attack and 1000 defense, requires 2 level 4 warrior monsters as material, and the following effect. Once per turn, you can detach 1 Xyz material from this card to target 1 ninja monster you control. It can make a second attack during each battle phase this turn. Well, it took us quite a while to get to the pot G of the archetype, but dally-ho, here we are. And yes, I am now abbreviating Power of the Guardians for convenience sake because I can't just try and stop me. Anyway, this is an easy to summon monster with decent attack and a simple beatdown effect. So much so, in fact, that just about every level 4-centric warrior deck ran at least ones as a means of securing an easy double attacking 2200 beat stick. However, in a ninja deck, surprisingly enough, he doesn't perform any better or worse than he does elsewhere due to a lack of additional field presence. Even if he does manage to hit the field with other ninjas on board, he's still more often than not the strongest monster on board since none of them generally have more than 2000 attack at that point. Even still, you run one or two of these for the same reason other decks that can make him do, but don't expect any special treatment. Next up is number 12, Crimson Shadow Armor Ninja, a rank 5 Earth with 2400 attack and 1700 defense, requires 2 level 5 monsters as material, and his quick effect lets you detach one to make ninja monsters unable to be destroyed for 1 turn. This would have been fine for a rank 4, but that one extra rank star had to go and ruin all the fun. By the time you waste all the resources needed to be able to make this thing, there probably won't be any ninjas left to protect, let alone any ninjas that you would actively want to protect. Also, it only protects against destruction, so that anything that doesn't directly destroy them is going to have no trouble playing around this thing. On top of that, the other protection effects in the archetype do basically the same thing that this card does, but better. What's next? A card that actively counters the exact archetype that it's supposed to belong to? Oh. Anyway, just don't run this thing. And the last monster is Ninja Grandmaster SAIZO, a Link 2 light with 2000 attack and arrows pointing to the bottom left and bottom right. It requires 2 ninjas as material and has the following effect. During your main phase, you can set 1 ninjitsu art spell and trap directly from your deck. You can only use this effect of Ninja Grandmaster SAIZO once per turn. While this card points to a monster's, this card cannot be targeted for an attack, also your opponent cannot target it with card effects. You know what? This is really good. The summoning condition exactly what it should have been for this deck. The effect really helps with the consistency, and the protection is great in theory, but unfortunately the deck is somewhat lacking in field presence for it to matter in most cases. Still, it's the best thing you have for building a board, so you'll want to run at least 2. And now for the spells and traps. To save time, let's get the ones you won't even consider running out of the way first. Fuma Shuriken, an equipped spell that screams 2003. Ninjitsu Art of Decoy, a protection trap that screams 2003 even louder. Armor Ninjitsu Art of Freezing, a battle trap that screams 2003 from 9 years in the future. And Ninjitsu Art of Shadow Sealing, a trap card version of a monster that's already a questionable choice to run at best. With those out of the way, let's get into the real meat of the review. First off is Ninjitsu Art Notebook, a continuous spell with the following effect. Once per turn, you can send 1 ninja monster from your hand to the graveyard, set 1 ninjitsu art spell or trap card directly from your deck, except Ninjitsu Art Notebook. I have to say I'm a bit on the fence with this one. On the one hand, the cost is a bit too specific to be used with any sort of consistency, but on the other hand, an easy way to search out the ninjitsu art cards is definitely a handy thing to have. But on the other hand, HANZO and SAIZO seem to be perfectly sufficient in that department, so running this might not necessarily add anything else. On the other hand, the ability to do so without using up your normal summon is definitely a lot handier in the long run. On the other, you get my point, hand. After discarding a ninja, you won't have much other options for your normal summon anyway to make use of that search. Look, there are a lot of positives and negatives here, and I can't tell you whether the former is strong enough to warrant running it. I'll leave it up to you. Next is the normal spell Armor Ninjitsu Art of Alchemy. If you control a ninjitsu art card, destroy as many other ninjitsu art cards you control as possible, then draw 2 cards. Run Magic Planner if you want draw power. While there are bound to be several dead ninjitsu art cards on the field, for reasons I'll get into later, it gets rid of all of them, including ones you would otherwise want to keep on the field. This means that, depending on how you set up your field, this card can be anywhere from an even 0 to a -9 in card advantage. Also, if you were thinking of comboing this with White Dragon Ninja to get a free Pot of Greed, you should know that if you fail to destroy any ninjitsu art cards, you don't get to draw cards with this effect. Whereas Magic Planner only requires 1 generic continuous trap so it doesn't blow up your entire field, is a send and not a destroy so it can play around White Dragon's effect, and is overall a much more consistent even 0 as long as you're not being an idiot about it. I can see why they made this, and if it weren't for that unfortunate setback of getting rid of a lot of shit that it really shouldn't, I would have recommended this one, but as it is, don't even bother. Their field spell is Hidden Village of Ninjitsu Arts. If a ninja monster is summoned to your field, you can target one ninja monster or one ninjitsu art card in your graveyard, add it to your hand, but you cannot activate cards or the effects of cards with that name for the rest of this turn. If a ninja monster or ninjitsu art cards you control would be destroyed by battle or an opponent's card effect, you can banish one ninja monster from your graveyard instead. You can only use each effect of Hidden Village of Ninjitsu Arts once per turn. This was so close to being everything the deck needed, but a few minor details completely ruined the card. Okay, not completely, but pretty damn close. When I first read this card, my brain turned off for half a minute, and I thought it said, when a ninja is sent to the graveyard, add one back to your hand. And that would actually be pretty cool. Get some advantage back from the ninjitsu art cards, dragon ninjas would lose most if not all their costs, we'd all be fine with that. But no, we're forced to settle for getting one back to the hand after summon, at which point the card is basically useless due to having already used up the normal summon. The protection effect is nicely designed as well, however it comes at the unfortunate drawback of conflicting with the first effect, because if you're doing a good enough job keeping up with the card advantage, there might not be enough shit left to banish. It's not a bad card and it's definitely saved my ass more times than I can count, but I feel like the potential might have been wasted by those two simple words. Feel free to run it, but I wouldn't max out on it. And now for the traps. Yes, that was indeed all the spells. We start off with Ninjitsu Art of Transformation, a continuous trap with this effect. Activate this card by tributing one face-up ninja monster, special summon one beast, winged beast, or insect monster from your hand or deck whose level is less than or equal to the level of the tributed monster had on the field, plus 3. When this card leaves the field, destroy that monster. There's actually a lot to unpack here. First of all, this sets up the tone of the deck using traps to transform its weaker monsters into bigger ones, and also how all the other traps work in general. You may have noticed that, unlike similar traps, while the targeted monster is destroyed if this card leaves the field, if the targeted monster leaves first, this card is not destroyed with it and remains on the field uselessly. This is what I meant when I kept saying there'd be a lot of dead cards on the field to be taken care of, but blowing them all up would do a lot more harm than good, and why pendulum summoning is a bad idea in MR4 due to already being clogged up in what little back row you already have. As for this card itself, this is why Dark SIMORGH is a really good card to use in a ninja deck as a lockdown option due to easily being summoned at a moment's notice with this card and any level 4 ninja monster. Also, this card is one half of the reason why the Dragon Ninjas have the types they do, but because of how this card specifically was made, it does lead to an interesting factoid, in that Red Dragon Ninja is the only one of the Dragon Ninjas to be unable to be summoned using his base form as material. As for this card, there aren't that many targets you would want to run for this to go into, and it's searchable enough to call upon when you need it, so I'd make sure to run one, but not any more than that. Next up is Ninjitsu Art of Duplication. Tribute one ninja monster, special summon any number of ninja monsters from your deck in face-up attack position or face-down defense position with combined levels less than or equal to the level of the tributed monster. When this card leaves the field, destroy those monsters. Remember what I said about there being a niche reason to run armed and crimson ninjas? What I wasn't referring to was the sheer amount of deck devastation that doing so would entail. You could use this on a level 4 ninja to turn this into a scapegoat for link summoning. However, doing so requires you to run anywhere from 4 to 6 garnets for a single-use link engine based on a single continuous trap, praying to God that this card survives the opponent's turn while simultaneously drawing into none of the monsters you want to summon with this. By that time, your opponent has most likely built a gigantic board with 4 to 5 negates, enough damage to kill you twice over, and at least 2 hand traps to ruin your entire day. Now ask yourself this, was it worth it? No, it wasn't. Next up, we have Ninjitsu Art of Super Transformation. Transformation to Super Transformation? What fucking schoolyard wise ass came up with the names for these cards? Keep your eye out next year for a Ninjitsu Art of Super Mega Ultra Dark Magic Dragon Breath transformation. Activate this card by targeting one ninja monster you control and one face-up monster your opponent controls. Send them to the graveyard, then special summon one dragon, dinosaur, or sea serpent monster from your deck, whose level is less than or equal to the combined original levels of the sent monsters. When this card leaves the field, banish that monster. Normally, I would immediately dismiss any card that requires your opponent to work, but since all it really requires is a level 3 or higher monster in most cases, it's really not that difficult to pull off. It may require you to use it preemptively in some cases, but it's not unreasonable to assume that you won't be left in the lurch with this one. Due to this being a much better card overall, and having a lot more better targets, running 2 or 3 of these is recommended. Next we have another transformation card in the form of Ninjitsu Art of Mirage Transformation. Tribute one ninja monster, then target one monster in your opponent's graveyard. Special summon it to your field. It is also treated as a ninja monster while this card is face up on the field. When this card leaves the field, send that monster to the graveyard. You can only activate one Ninjitsu Art of Mirage Transformation once per turn. I have to say I'm kind of conflicted with this one. Here we have another card that requires your opponent to work, in this case leaving a powerful monster in their graveyard for you to use. However, I still run one copy regardless for one reason and one reason alone. The hilarity factor. In my life, I've only resolved Mirage Transformation to my advantage once against a flustered Amazoness player who was dumb enough to leave a Liger in her graveyard at the end of her combo, but that moment still sticks out as the absolute most fun I've ever had playing this deck. I mean, just think of the logistics of reviving a hybrid lion tiger as a deadly zombie ninja. If that doesn't sound like the most awesome thing ever, you can leave. But anyway, back to this. I guess you could do quite a bit of damage if your opponent just happens to have the perfect monster in their graveyard at the time, but that's a very what-if dependent scenario that only happens about once every 15 Helio cycles. You can run one of these for style points alongside your senior silver ninja, but I wouldn't run any more than that. And the last card is Armor Ninjitsu Art of Rust Mist. When a monster is special summoned to your opponent's field, if you control a face-up ninja monster, have the current attack of that special summoned monster. I feel like I need to preface a statement by saying I can hardly go a day without being praised for my genius ability to do basic arithmetic in my head while refusing to use a calculator. Thus, when I tell you that you're going to need one when you're using this card, you can take that to the fucking bank. It's definitely a good card worth running due to it being non-targeting permanent attack manipulation on a massive scale that takes current attack into account, effectively cutting active boosts in half as well. But the sheer amount of back and forth adding, subtracting, and dividing is enough to make even an Evil Swarm player cry. Run 2 or 3, but always make sure to have your calculator on standby. This is an example of how a pure ninja deck would work in today's metagame. Mind you, it's not a bad build, or at least not as bad as some of the gutter trash we've covered so far, but I still wouldn't recommend taking this anywhere beyond a local level. And here's Kieran's super secret Dino Ninja build that he stomped my ass with a week ago, and now I'm revealing his secrets for all the world to see. But now, how would we go about fixing this? Well, for an archetype based entirely around ninjas, this deck is kind of embarrassingly lacking in speed. Basing all your play enablers around continuous traps might have been fine 5 centuries ago, but in today's metagame it's the equivalent of bringing a knife to a tank fight. It's thematic, but far from a practical move nowadays. A little more swarming would be generally appreciated as well. They're somewhat tolerable in that department as it is, but more often than not they tend to find themselves one monster short of being able to build a board. However, since their best monster for swarming is Yellow Ninja, this brings us to the biggest problem of the deck, in that they need more extra deck toolboxing. If you're going to lock yourself into your own archetype, you need to have more than 2 options to be able to go for at any given moment. And no, the super heavy samurai monsters don't count because they're nigh impossible to summon in this deck. Lastly, either some more protection or some way to utilize what protection they have is needed as well. They actually have a fair bit of it, but it's either extremely inconsistent or conflicting with how the deck is supposed to function. Now for the prescription, we actually have a surprising amount here considering how I was trying to keep it short. Also, most of it actually came from me this time since Kieran could only get about one done on time for this video. See if you can spot the one Kieran made and score yourself 10 bonus points if you find it. We start off with the duo of Ninja Grandmaster KOSUKE and Rokuro. They're both level 1s with 0 attack and defense, and a quick effect that lets you discard them in place of a ninja you control being destroyed. KOSUKE prevents effect destruction, and Rokuro prevents battle destruction. They also allow you to search a card when they're sent to the graveyard. Rokuro searches a ninjitsu art, while KOSUKE searches a ninja monster other than herself. Both effects on both monsters are at a hard once per turn. These two are here mostly to make more use of duplication while also giving them some additional utility beyond being huge garnets for link fodder, allowing you to get some recursion on using them as you see fit. They're too low of a level to reliably be used as transformation fodder, with some exceptions, but the floating upon being used as material more than makes up for it. Ratios can vary, but if you plan on using duplication, I would max out on both of them. The next monster is Green Ninja. No, not that Green Ninja, although that'd be one hell of a crossover. She's a level 4 Earth with 1800 attack and 1900 defense and the following effect. If all monsters you control are ninja monsters, minimum 1, you can special summon this card from your hand, but you cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck for the rest of this turn except ninja monsters. If this card is summoned, you can activate this effect. For the rest of this turn, you can activate ninjitsu art trap cards from your hand. You can only use each effect of Green Ninja once per turn. If you're going to have continuous traps be your main play enabler for your deck, then this effect is one that is desperately needed. The summoning condition is just to give you that little extra push in the swarming department, since ninjas always seem to be just one monster short of being able to make a halfway decent board. But since you need trap cards to build said board in the first place, you absolutely cannot do without this one. Whether you're playing link spam ninjas, control ninjas, fucking Ojama ninjas, this card is a definite 3 off. Now to round out the last of the Dragon Ninja series, here we have Green Dragon Ninja. She's a level 7 Earth Insect, since that's the only type attribute combination that hasn't been used yet. She's got 2600 attack and 1400 defense, and cannot be special summoned except with the effect of a ninja monster or a ninjitsu art card. In a quick effect, you can discard one card, activate one of the following effects. Add one ninja monster from your graveyard to your hand, then send one ninjitsu art card from your deck to the graveyard. Or add one ninjitsu art card from your graveyard to your hand, then send one ninja monster from your deck to the graveyard. You can only use this effect of Green Dragon Ninja once per turn. At a first glance, it looks like a simple recovery effect to get back a few key pieces of your engine, and while that may be the main intention of the effect, there's also the factor of the foolish part of the effect, which helps set up the graveyard for Hidden Village's protection effect, as well as synergizing with KOSUKE and Rokuro's floating effects to get even more card advantage, which is very welcome in this deck. It can be a bit of a dead draw, but the same thing also applies to the rest of the Dragon Ninjas as well. Fortunately, there's also a card coming up soon that can help alleviate some of this brick potential, so I would recommend at least 1 or 2. Now for the extra deck, we actually have quite a bit here, starting with Ninja Grandmaster Ryuji. It's a Link 1 Dark with 1000 attack and an arrow pointing to the left. It requires one level 8 or lower warrior type ninja monster as material, and has the following effect. If this card is special summoned, you can add one ninja monster or ninjitsu art card from your deck or graveyard to your hand. And a quick effect, during the main or battle phase, you can target one ninja monster you control, change the attribute of that target until the end phase of this turn. You can only use each effect of Ninja Grandmaster Ryuji once per turn. We'll get into that last effect later, but let's talk about the rest of the card for now. It's a Link 1 with an easy summoning condition that lets you search out additional playmakers or setup tools upon summoning. The leftward facing arrow can be a bit annoying as a first turn option, but considering you're going to be using this as material for one of the Link monsters or as a target for one of the transformation cards, it all evens out considering you're going to be reviving it more often than actually Link summoning it. And while some of you may be wondering how the former would work, since the first 2 transformation cards specifically require monsters with levels to work, At the risk of revealing some of the layered support, this entire card was designed to be able to make whatever dragon ninja you need at the moment. This is further supported by his name meaning dragon, a factoid that anyone would know if they have at least a passing interest in teenage rom-com anime of all things. Anyway, run 2 or 3 of these. The next monster is Ninja Grandmaster KOTARON, a Link 3 Dark with 2500 attack and arrows pointing top, right, left, and down. Requires 2 or more warrior type monsters, and you can only control one Ninja Grandmaster KOTARON. It gains the following effects based on the number of ninja monsters used for this card's Link summon. 1 or more. While this card is linked to a ninja monster, this card cannot be targeted or destroyed by card effects. 2 or more, once per turn, quick effect, you can target 1 card on each field, destroy them. And 3, once per turn, when your opponent activates a card or effect, quick effect, you can send 1 ninjitsu art card from your field to the graveyard, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy it. The soft once per turn on the destruction and negation effects might seem like it's a bit overpowered at first, but the fact that you can only control 1 as well as requiring it to be summoned in a specific way prevents it from being overused and abused too much. As far as the new boss monsters of the archetype, this one is the most versatile of the 2, but it requires you to summon it specifically with 3 ninjas and for it to be pointed to or at by a 4th to gain the full effect. This isn't impossible now that duplication is a viable strategy now, but it'll still require some effort at least. Also, the arrow configuration does allow you to take a shortcut to an extra link, though that still is impossible to do under the archetype locks from Yellow and Green Ninja, so it'll still take a while. Even still, make sure to run at least 1 of these. And the last monster is Ninja Grand Warlord YUKIMURA. It's a Link 4 Light with 3000 attack and bore load arrows, requires 2 or more ninja monsters as material, and you can only control 1 Ninja Grand Warlord YUKIMURA. Gains 300 attack for each ninja monster or ninjitsu art card with a different name you control except this card. Other ninja monsters you control cannot be destroyed by battle or your opponent's card effects. If this card would be destroyed by battle or card effects, you can send 1 other ninja monster you control to the graveyard instead. Thematically appropriate, this is the main source of raw power in a deck that was severely lacking in that regard. Protecting your other ninjas can help narrow down the protection effects to just 1 monster, meaning that you can more effectively use said protection to make for a more defend the castle type of playstyle. There's not much utility beyond that, but it's still a good tool for narrowing down your strategy. Again, run 1 or 2. The next card is the only spell card in the new lineup, that being Ninjitsu Art of Vapor Shield. During the main phase, you can discard 1 ninja monster, add 1 ninja monster with a different name from your deck to the hand. If a ninja monster you control is targeted for an attack or by an opponent's card effect, you can negate the attack or effect. Can only use each effect of Ninjitsu Art of Substitution once per turn. Not only does this add yet another layer of protection, but it also feeds into the protection given by the field spell by setting up the graveyard for banish fodder. It also helps trade in a ninja you wouldn't happen to need at the particular moment for one of the ones that you could use to help set up a board. This is also the reason why it's a spell card instead of a trap, since you need to be able to make sure you have access to Green Ninja before gaining the speed it offers in the first place. 2 or 3 should be fine here. The next card is the trap card Ninjitsu Art of Shadow Echoes. If a ninja monster leaves the field due to the effect of a ninja monster or a ninjitsu art card, you can add 1 ninjitsu art card from your deck to the hand. If a ninjitsu art card is activated during your opponent's turn, you can target 1 ninja monster with 1500 or less attack in your graveyard, special summon it but banish it when it leaves the field. A nice bit of contingency that helps make up for the cost on some of the cards you'll be using most often. The Graveyard Revival effect also helps to build a board by creating fodder for the ninjitsu art cards, allowing you to get whatever dragon ninja monster you need, especially when used with combination with Ryuji. Additionally, it can also be used to create a board with SAIZO or YUKIMURA to flood the field with as many ninjas as possible, which makes Shingetsu a good choice for an added layer of protection as well. Also, since this is a ninjitsu art card itself, it can trigger its own effect upon the initial activation, if you don't activate it immediately with Green Ninja, that is. Again, 2 or 3 would be recommended. And the last card is another transformation card, this being Ninjitsu Art of Dragon Transformation. Target one ninja monster you control, tribute it, then special summon one dragon ninja monster from your hand, deck, or graveyard with the same attribute the targeted monster had on the field. If this card leaves the field, destroy that monster. During the main phase, you can banish this card from the graveyard, special summon one Dragon Ninja monster that is banished during your graveyard, but banish it when it leaves the field. You can only use one effect of Ninjitsu Art of Dragon Transformation per turn, and only once per turn. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that most of you figured this one out already, but as far as getting Dragon Ninjas specifically, there isn't any better option. Not only does it pull from anywhere, reducing the amount of brick potential, but it only requires the attributes to match up without having anything to do with levels, so you can use Link and Xyz monsters as material as well. This means that as long as you have a Ryuji in your extra deck, you can basically pull out whatever Dragon Ninja you need at any given moment. As if that wasn't enough, it also has a graveyard effect to summon a Dragon Ninja without giving it a weakness to MST. If there was ever a transformation trap to run as a 3-off, this would be it. And that's all I got. That was a bit more than I had intended to make, but I don't think it'll be clogging up the archetype too much. For my closing thoughts, I have to say this may be the most awkwardly mishandled archetype I have ever seen in my life. I may joke about Red Eyes being overly schizophrenic and designed by several people, but it's objectively true in this case. The fact that there are several members that were accidentally added well after the archetype was clearly defined shall forever be a monument to Konami's stupidity. Either they thought that splashing in ninja support would somehow benefit the likes of Karakuri and Super Heavy Samurai of all things, or they managed to somehow simply forget about one of the oldest and largest archetypes in the entire game when they were designing them. And you know what? I may not know which one is worse, but I'm not going to dwell on it either, because I would very much rather keep my kunai in my tights, if you know what I mean. Thank you all so much for watching. Sorry this is a bit late, but work has been a bit hectic lately. I'm still nowhere near being able to do this full-time or even part-time, so you may have to deal with some inconsistencies in my schedule. If you'd like to help me out, please check out my Patreon page and maybe consider donating to keep this channel alive. But anyway, thank you guys for watching, and until next time, don't get run over, and I'll see you guys later. Also, the card Kieran made was Shadow Echoes.